Okay, so we have a lot to get through in 45 minutes, so let's start. First of all, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia where this webinar is being streamed live. I would particularly like to pay respect to the Noongar people, elders past, present and emerging, of Whadjuk Noongar Boodja, where we are hosting from today. Welcome to the second in what will hopefully be an ongoing series of National Archibubs webinars. A little bit on Archibubs first. Archibubs started in South Australia in December 2021 as a series of child-friendly in-person events. Archibubs now exists in every state and the ACT. Each chapter does things a little differently to suit its members, but the purpose is the same: to provide a platform for parents, caregivers, and parents-to-be to connect, share experiences and challenges. In June this year, Imagine South Australia hosted the first National Archibubs webinar titled Parental Rights. There was a lot of insightful information shared, and if you were not able to attend, we'll be sharing a link that you can click on and view that recording. So building on that first webinar, today is titled Empowering Parenthood. My name is Mimi Cho, and as co-chair of WA's Gender Equity Taskforce, I will be your host. It is my pleasure today to welcome three speakers to discuss the topic with a focus on sharing the load between primary and secondary caregiver, as well as employer and employee. Now, after each speaker has shared their perspective, we'll have a group discussion and take questions from the Q&A window. You should find a button for the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to type questions via this Q&A function at any time during the webinar. And of course, if you want to ask a question anonymously, make sure you select that option. A reminder that this webinar is being recorded. And if you are comfortable to, because we would love to know, please share in the chat where you're joining us from. Now, without further ado, what you're all here for, our first speaker today is Hassle People and Culture business partner, Candice Knight. As a mother of young children herself, Candice is living by her own advice. Today, Candice will present a summary of recent updates to government flexible working and parental leave entitlements, and also share best practice examples for organisations and individuals to navigate family and work life. Over to you, Candice.
Thank you so much, Mimi. Hi, everybody. I'm Candice. I've been at Hassle as a people and culture business partner for about 4 years, and I'm currently on parental leave for the second time around. So as a mum working in HR, I want to share with you your rights and entitlements as a parent under Fair Work legislation, and share with you those leading practice examples in two key areas, which is flexibility and parental leave. Because to me, empowering parenthood is having the flexibility that you need that supports you as a parent in that everyday blend of work and family. And empowering parenthood is having organisations that support the parenting journey in a way that reflects the diverse community of parents. So let's talk about what's most important to us first, which is flexibility. And so as parents, we need a level of flexibility and autonomy over how we manage our time and our workflow to suit our own family demands. Flexibility takes many forms. So when we talk about flexibility, we're looking at a variety of arrangements, including working part-time, having alternative start and finishing times, having time off in lieu arrangements, working from home, or just that informal access to leave for the unexpected. As a parent under Fair Work legislation, you are entitled to request a flexible work arrangement. Flexibility can be requested at any time. It's not just for parents returning from parental leave, and it's not just for mums. So under Fair Work, the process to request flexibility is it must be done in writing, email is fine, You need to clearly explain the changes being asked for and the reason for the requested change. Your employer has 21 days to respond in writing and include in the response if the arrangement is approved or refused and on what reasonable business grounds. So from July this year, Fair Work has really tightened up its wording and its guidance around requesting flexibility. And it's really putting onus on employers to take flexible requests seriously and accommodate flexibility at work. And it's really encouraging discussions being held between employees and employers. So my advice is always have a discussion with your employer, and as an employer, be open and willing to accommodate flexibility. There could be a really creative solution here that's going to be a win-win. My other recommendation is to put a trial period in place. So if you have a flexible work arrangement, give it 3 months, 6 months, check in regularly and see how it's going. It's not a set and forget. It can be adjusted on the way to make sure that it's working for both your architecture practice and working for that person and their family needs. What a leading practice would have might be a flexible work policy or a guideline, but what's equally or more important is having a culture that supports flexibility. So it's these things like showing trust in your employees. Trust your employees to do their job and deliver. It's having a culture of speaking positively about flexibility. So it's not hearing comments in the workplace like, oh, they're leaving early again, when an employee is going to go do school pickup. Messages like this make these arrangements feel like they're not normal or accepted. So it's changing the language in the workplace around flexibility. And then it's leaders that role model a good work-life blend. So leaders in the business are very effective role models at showing what can and can't work and what's encouraged. When leaders openly support flexibility and they have flexible work arrangements themselves, it really validates us as parents and shows us that flexibility is a normal and acceptable part of work. If you're a parent returning from a period of parental leave, I encourage you to talk to your employer about your flexibility needs. And each family is different. We all have our own different circle of support. And I think this is something Kellie and Seán can attest to. We all have different levels of support in our family and our networks. And so employers need to be guided by their employees and not make assumptions about needs. It's not assuming that, oh, when she comes back from parental leave, she's going to want to work part-time, or they're not only going to work on this kind of project. Don't make assumptions about what people need. Engage in conversations, talk openly, and talk often about flexibility in your workplace. The next thing I want to chat about is parental leave pay. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is the government parental leave pay and what's been changing. So what's happened this year is the government has really progressed this more gender-neutral approach to the designation of paid parental leave, encouraging both parents to access leave and the paid parental leave. It's also making it a lot more flexible in terms of when you can take the payment and how you can access the payment and split it between parents. So it's really empowering parents to manage their own work and care arrangements, and it's also aiming to encourage more men to take parental leave. So what's the entitlement? So as of the 1st of July, it's 20 weeks of paid parental leave, and that can be, split between partners. What's going to be even better is when paid parental leave increases over the coming years, which is fantastic news. So it's going to go 22, 24, and then 26 weeks from July 2026, which is such a fantastic outcome for families. But we need more than this. We need more than 20 weeks of paid parental leave to support our families. And leading practices go further than these minimum requirements and provide employer-funded paid parental leave. So a modern parental leave policy complements, inclusive, family-friendly workplace practices and promotes a sustainable work-life balance of both male and female. At Hassel, we introduced a new parental leave policy in July this year, which gives all parents, whether you're primary or secondary carer, mum or dad, 16 weeks of paid parental leave. So 16 weeks at full pay. And this includes parents who have surrogacy, adoption, foster placement, or parents of a stillborn baby. This initiative has had a huge, amazing overwhelming response from our employees. And I know in the Perth studio, we currently have a dad who has just started his 16 weeks of paid parental leave. At Hassle, we also offer a childcare allowance. We provide additional personal leave for returning parents. We encourage and promote flexibility. We provide information packs to support parents returning from work. We have our employee assistance program, which also has specific tips and tricks to support parents, and our e-learning platform has the same offering. So at Hassle, we are really trying to be industry leaders in how we support and show up for our parents. If you ask our managing director, Liz Westgarth, she'll tell you that this policy just isn't about us. It's about setting a new inclusive industry benchmark, and it's about shifting the world toward equal parenting, empowering parents and families, whether you work at Hassle or not. You might be saying, Candice, I work in a small practice. How can we support our parents and families and people returning from parental leave? Well, there's a few other things you could do, additional benefits that you could offer those with families or caregiving responsibilities. It's things like continuing to provide superannuation contributions during periods of parental leave. It's, perhaps reducing eligibility requirements to access employer-funded paid parental leave. So getting rid of that 12-month waiting period and offering it, earlier. You could do things like top up the government paid parental leave. So the current weekly rate is about $882. You could top it up to what that person's normal weekly rate is so that they're getting a full rate of pay for those 18 weeks. And then it's things like, employer subsidised childcare, supporting parents securing school holiday care, and having good breastfeeding or express facilities available for your parents. I'm going to pivot. The last thing I want to touch on is something that came into legislation a couple of years ago, is miscarriage leave. If you miscarriage, you are entitled to compassionate leave, which is 2 days of leave at full pay. And noting that compassionate leave is not deducted from annual personal leave, it's its own leave type. You are also eligible to take special unpaid parental leave until you are fit to return to work. And so this unpaid special parental leave doesn't impact future parental leave entitlements. Miscarriage is something that you may not feel comfortable sharing with your employer, and it may be something that's really difficult for you to discuss. So I'm sharing this not to say that you don't have to access this entitlement, but it's about knowing that it's there and available to you if you need it. Something I was thinking, well, how can we get around this? Well, you could also access your personal leave, but maybe you could get a medical certificate from your doctor to say, this person needs compassionate leave, or we could think of maybe a way around it. But just know that it's there and available to you. And then again, I'm always encouraging you to access an employee assistance program if your practice offers it. If you are from a small firm, there are member associations which offer an EAP. I know NAWIC has it available if you're a member, so that you get the support that you need. And so why is this all of this so important? It's also part of the wellbeing of architects. If you look at the practitioner survey from 2021 and the wellbeing of architects, they report that mothers feel a lack of support from their workplace and the management systems. And they feel like the perception is that when they're in a caring role, it's a real barrier to career progression as well. And they end up leaving the industry altogether or for really long periods of time. So this is really important for that gender equity topic as well. Empowering parenthood, equal parenting, is supporting parents of flexibility. I think I've run out of time to chat. I've got so much I wanted to talk to you, but I thought I'd cover those three main topics around empowering you to knowing that you can request flexibility, having policies that support parents in their journey, regardless of where they are, and also noting that miscarriage leave is available to you as well. Thank you so much, Beanie. Thank you, Kellie and Seán. I look forward to hearing and listening to your experience as well.
Thanks, Candice. That was a lot that you had to summarize down into a really short period of time. So really appreciate that. And, of course, we can expand on these topics in the discussion with Kellie and Seán. So just a reminder, I can see that a question has popped up in the chat. If I can remind everyone to pose your questions in the Q&A window so that it's very clear and we can manage the questions a little bit cleaner there, and we leave the chat for some sort of general interaction links. So Candice, take a breather. We'll check back in with you after Kellie and Seán. And so I'll introduce Kellie and Seán now. Kellie and Seán McGivern are partners in life and parenting, both registered as architects in the UK before immigrating to Perth in 2011. Kellie worked in a large practice before moving into consultancy and is currently a design manager at development company Hesperia. Seán is also a registered architect in not one, but 3 Australian states, and is a director at the award-winning KHA studio. Today, Kellie and Seán will share their lived experiences of raising a family whilst supporting one another's career in architecture. Now, Kellie and Seán, from discussions we've had leading up to this webinar, you mentioned that you had similar career journeys up until the point that you had kids. So I'd like to ask you, could you each describe your career journey and how parenting has or hasn't affected your career? And perhaps, Seán, would you like to go first?
Yeah, no worries. Look, we obviously were educated back in the UK, and I finished my studies over 20 years ago now, but it was fairly swift progression through registration. I sort of registered a year after I graduated, and then I set up a practice in an office in Belfast. At the same stage, Kellie was still completing her studies, but we were lucky enough to work together then for 4 years in that office in Belfast. And we got married, bought a house together, and then the GFC really kicked in. And while we still had work, it had got to become pretty ordinary work at that stage, and we really wanted a challenge. We challenged ourselves to see if there was somewhere else in the world that we'd be interested in living in, and through a process of deduction decided to hit the road and move to Perth. And Australia really has welcomed us with open arms, and it's been a great place for us. I was lucky enough to get a job with Kerry back in 2011, and sort of was really challenged within the practice, but sort of worked on lots of good projects and started to get sort of promoted to associate, and then we decided to start a family. And yeah, look, I guess from my point of view, and we can talk about this probably more in detail together, I suppose the biggest challenge, I suppose, was just the fact that it was me and Kellie. We'd moved from the other side of the world. We didn't have that sort of nuclear family to rely upon. We both, our parents are still back in Ireland, and our siblings as well. So that was kind of the primary challenge as to how we sort of managed that process, of sort of trying to maintain the work that we love doing as both architects, and really enjoyed working here in Australia, but we also had this beautiful family that was starting to develop, and how we sort of were able to manage that together. And then I suppose just in terms of my career, then I became a director with Kerry about a year before he passed away, and myself and Patrick then took over the management of the office since. To an extent, it's been great being in partnership in a business with somebody else who is a parent, and who his partner is also an architect, and they've got a couple of children, and that's created a really good level of understanding within the practice about parenthood, about what that means to be an architect and a parent at the same time, given the sort of creative industry that we work in, and the sort of pressures that puts on people with time and creativity. But it's also, I think, Anna can talk about it a bit more in the questions about how we manage that within the practice.
Yeah, just so if I talk about my career progression, you know, thought about this just as you were talking, you know, I think having children wasn't really the reason for my pivot in my career. When we came to Australia, before then we'd worked together, and we made a conscious decision that we wanted to have our own sort of identity in Australia, a new chapter, new identity. We're both pretty strong humans, strong personalities, and I suppose, you know, we're both pretty ambitious. And yeah, when I first came here, I worked for a small practice in high-end residential, and managed a practice there. And it was always sort of said to me, "Oh, Kellie, you can't go off and have children. Make sure you don't leave us and have children." And it was kind of like a little bit of a joke, tongue in cheek. But I suppose that was the first time in my life I kind of thought to myself, "Oh goodness, I'm childbearing age now. People are expecting, you know, you could be seen as being different." And although it was a joke at the time, it did make me think a little bit differently about, you know, how women are perceived, and that jump from when you're young, ambitious, you can do anything, you can, you know, you throw yourself into all your passions. There is a shift when you turn 30 and how that changes. I then moved into large practice in architecture, and, you know, Seán and I often had discussions about, we've been together a long time, we're together 20 years next year. And we talked about, you know, when's the right time to have children. So there's never a right time, but I was always holding on, because I'd talked about getting a promotion. So I was waiting for that promotion before having children. And so then became an associate and went on maternity leave. And I suppose when I came back from maternity leave, the quality of work wasn't there. And it was in a bit of a downturn period of time in WA. There was that 2017, it was harder to get work, a much different landscape than it is today. And the quality of work just wasn't there. It was, you know, working on not doing enough meaningful work. And I was working part-time and building up to full-time. So I was full-time by the time Florence was 1 year old. I went back to work when she was 7 months old. And so that pivot happened. I decided not to pursue an architectural role. And I don't necessarily think that was because of limitations presented by architecture. The long hour culture, yes, there is a long hour culture in architecture, but I think that's probably more about passion than anything else. You know, when you're so passionate about what you're doing, you want to give your all, and that's who I am. So I don't think that changes in architecture and in other roles. Your passion comes through. You just want to dedicate your everything to those things. And it was more about pivoting my career into doing something meaningful and doing something rather than as an architect being reactionary. I wanted to be proactive, and I thought that I could add a lot of value in the front end, and noticed that a lot of the time when architect clients presented opportunities to architects, they expected the architect to fill in the gaps and come up with a vision and what the project actually meant. So that's the kind of work that I do today. I get a lot out of it, and my role, I suppose, I still act, the type of work that I do is still the work of an architect, but just in a different industry. So yeah, sort of circle back to the question, that career change, I don't necessarily think was to do with having children, and more sort of a personal pivot and change. And, you know, I just sort of did a bit of research 10 minutes before this meeting, you know, thinking about career change happens actually not just in architecture when people have children, but it actually happens in every industry. And in the past, people went into a vocation and went into a career, and that career lasted a long time. They maybe, some people stayed in the same jobs for their whole life. And today that landscape is completely changing, and people are having as much as 35 jobs in 7 different careers paths. So people are much more agile and willing to give things a go and back themselves and think, okay, well, I want to see where the world takes me and my skills, and how you can almost reinvent yourself to be the best that you can be, the skill set that you learn to have. And as architects, even in architectural practice, we've got actually so much training and skill to pivot and change that you can still stay within architecture and within the realm, but your training, people specialize all the time, and everyone can specialize in their own right, what they bring, and how that is manifested into parenting, you know, it can be done.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point. Like, you know, being able to have processes in place to within your family unit that you can support each other. Like, you know, just even though I had a linear career, like Kellie supported me through that linear career. Like, and she was very much like, you know, if this is what you want to do, this is what you want to do. And we had lots of conversations about, from Kellie's point of view as well, about what you want to do. And nothing's ever a problem. Like, you, at the end of the day, it's about happiness. It's about, you know, being safe and secure in your own mind about what you want to do in life. And, you know, whatever you can reasonably put in place, both in your own close-knit environment, and then as sort of an employer or as an employee in that sort of wider environment, that's kind of the starting point, you know. Once you start throwing problems up, that's whenever you start getting, you know, that's whenever confrontation happens. Negative things create negative environments, so you always have to sort of have a more positive way of managing all of these issues in life.
And parenting, I think, you know, we're designers as well, and you have to kind of design your life. So, yeah, you know, parenting and trying to have 2 parents working, we both work full time, we both work, you know, both very passionate people in what we do, and all of that stuff in the background with children and family and organizing and managing, can't just wing it and see what happens. There are the weeks that kind of the wheels fall off. Like this week, for example, we didn't have a meal plan for the week, and what's for dinner each night, you know, it was a bit of a challenge. So, you know, and normally, you know, pretty regimented, and naturally, and Seán might say different, that I'm a pretty organized person, and he does sort of say, you know, you're always planning it, you know, months ahead, how are we going to plan for X, Y, and Z. But I don't think I'm naturally that human. You have to be thinking about where the kids, where they're going to be, what are they to get ready for school for this week, what's on, what are their little news stories, homework, what are they going to have for dinner. It's a huge juggle, but the way to manage it is only by design and open dialogue.
Yeah, open dialogue, but also, like, it's not just coming from Northern Europe to here, but even people moving from Sydney or Brisbane or Melbourne to Perth, you have this life which is kind of quite peculiar in that you do have to find a way to make it work. Like, not having the nuclear family, I think, is one of the biggest things about managing your life, and you need to have this network of friends, which we are really lucky to have that in our locality. You know, we have friends that are mining engineers, that work for environmental companies, that have small businesses, that work in HR, and they're all from other places in the world, and they're all facing the same issues, and they're all trying to manage their parenthood through their careers as well. So you get this kind of like-minded network of people that, you know, allow for that sort of empowerment in parenthood and allow for careers to progress.
There's something, not having to, Seán and I came here on our own to a new country, no network, no family, sister has been moved here, but something really empowering about that as well, being able to design your own parenting style. Neither of us had a lot of experience with children, but I have in particular felt it really empowering that I can do it my way, and you don't have parents in the background saying, oh, you should be doing this or you should be doing that. So there are pros and cons to having that, traditional nuclear family. And what is traditional today? It's not just displaced people who are moving to new locations, but people are choosing to have children later, and therefore grandparents are going to be older, and maybe they're not able to look after children as much, or maybe they don't want to, or maybe they're still working themselves. So being able to do things your own way, I find quite empowering as well.
I love that. I'm going to ask you both to just hold that thought on, designing your own life. And on that positive note, we've got 13 minutes left. So there are some questions that have already started coming in. So just pulling out this one, relating to a lot of what Kellie is saying, coming back from mat leave, the work not being meaningful. The question is, do any of you, thanks Candice, you can rejoin us. For all of you, do you have any tips on how to overcome being profiled as a parent?
Can I just cut in with an anecdote in this one? And I was talking about this with one of my colleagues, and she's a parent, and whenever she came to join us, she had a 1-year-old. She said, and it sort of picks up on what Kellie said, is meaningful work. And she said the great thing about coming back to our office was that you were given meaningful work, that you felt that you were being valued as an architect, and that you were doing the work that you enjoyed doing, and not because you were working part-time or flexible hours because you want to be with your child for a certain amount of the week, that you got pushed into doing AOAs or work that you didn't feel was sort of fulfilling you as an architect. And I think really that both for any parent, that's a really important thing, because it's a struggle, and I think you need to be able to come into work and feel like you're just as valued as somebody who's some 25-year-old graduate bouncing about the office because they're just loving life,
I think I've thought a lot about this as well, about what I could have done more to have been heard. And I think that and Emma Williamson I worked with actually Emma Williamson for a year from the Fulcrum Agency, and she had a talk to the Institute in the last 12 months, and it was if you come back to work and you're working on the EOIs and you're not being heard, you have to back yourself. And if you're not getting to do what you want, you've got to make your change. Be empowered to make a shift, and maybe that's just not the right place for you. And if you are part of a community and practice that respects you, and you respect, because you give your job, your world as architects, we're so passionate, we give it our everything. We're not in the job just to check in, check out. And that's what you'll be doing, checking in, checking out, if you're just, if you're doing work that isn't being fulfilling. So I think I should have made a call a lot sooner. I'm a person who just doesn't give up, and working for practice, it's part of my identity, and it's part of, it's an extension of me. And so part of my personality is just to dig in and try harder and think that I can dig my way out of things. And maybe that's just not always the case. And we've got an infinite amount of time to make an impact, and that's what we want to do. So pivot and change, either within your own practice, or if you can't make it there, then make a change yourself.
Yeah, sounds like it's a two-way street, really. It's conscious pivot from both leaders and individuals themselves. And I'm sure, Candice, there are laws set in place that people can't be discriminated upon.
Yeah, absolutely. Under our anti-discrimination laws, there are protected attributes, and these are having parent or caring responsibilities, breastfeeding, and pregnancy. And you must be included in your workplace's remuneration and promotion processes. If you're not, it's against the law. You're being discriminated against because of being a carer or parent or pregnant or breastfeeding. So there are avenues. You can contact the Fair Work Ombudsman for advice and take it further. So there are avenues there, and the law is on your side. Is the only other thing I would add, because I completely agree with everything Kellie and Seán were talking about. Yeah, having meaningful work for part-time I think is really challenging employers, and you need to challenge them and dig in and fight, advocate for yourself.
Yeah,
easier said than done, yeah. But yeah, you need to advocate for yourself.
You need to advocate for yourself, but as an employer,
yeah,
what's the point in having an employee that you're not giving meaningful work to? Because at the end of the day, it's a win-win situation. I just beggars belief that doesn't happen. Well, anyhow.
Okay, and yeah, we will be sending around these links that Candice is mentioning so that you can all have a look in your own time. So trying to move on and get through the other questions that have come through. The next one is about work-life balance after having children. This person is saying, I feel like other industries seem to have it worked out better than us. Is that something, Candice, you can comment on?
Yeah, work-life balance, and it was mentioned before, in the design industry, we have this culture of always on, culture of working overtime. And I think what we really need to work on is our boundaries and holding boundaries for when we are on and when we are off. So my advice is always around know your boundaries and not only be clear, but enforce when you are working and when you are reachable and when you are not. And being consistent in holding your boundary. No one else has a more important role to play in this but you. So be clear, use the appropriate tools, your out of office, updating your teams, having your availability in your calendars. And I would also recommend turn off your notifications. Resist the urge to respond when you're on your non-working day or whether you're on parental leave. Turn off those notifications and resist that urge to respond, because unfortunately it then starts building that expectation. My next recommendation would be respect others' boundaries. So if you know someone's on annual leave or if they're away, respect their right to disconnect and to not call them while they're taking some time away from the studio. And yeah, again, so it's just being really clear and respecting others' boundaries.
And if there's a question about, I suppose, whether you're required, so legally, question to you, are you required to disclose that you are a parent to a potential firm that you're going to be joining? And then maybe a question to Seán as a director, is that something you look at? Is that you consider when you're having someone join your team? So Candice, if you can go first, and then Seán.
No, if you're being interviewed for a role, your capacity as being a parent has got nothing to do with the inherent requirements of the role. So no, you don't have to disclose if you are a parent or becoming a parent. I would say in the interview process, no.
Yeah, look, it's a pretty easy one. Like even before Candice gave her answer, absolutely no way. I think since I've been here in 13 years, there's been like 35 babies born to people in our office. So it's certainly not that kind of It just doesn't matter. Like we work with people, and that's the important thing as an employer. You just have to listen to people. You have to working from home as an architect in an industry which is collaborative and creative. I think that working from home has always been the trickiest thing for us to manage, and I don't know, happy to sort of open the floor to that one, but it's always just that sort of getting people together, like, because in our office we have so many different collaboration spaces where you can just have ad hoc meetings, but it's not that we don't do it, we just manage it. But I'd say that's probably sort of the main thing. But look, yeah, it doesn't matter if you have a baby or not.
Great. Okay, just conscious we have 4 minutes left, so we'll do one last question and then we'll wrap up. So circling back to a question from Gab, who is the creator of Archibubs from South Australia. It's a question for you, Candice, saying she loves the initiative that Hassle is promoting for parental leave and wondering what you would suggest in how to start these conversations with an employer who doesn't have a paid parental leave policy in place.
Yeah, it's a really good question. The 2 links I'll put in the chat, I've already put one, is the Workplace Gender Equity Agency. They collect data from all workplaces and different industries and provide information around what's happening in terms of gender pay gap and trends. They also have some fantastic resources on the data and case studies on parental leave in different workplaces and how it's benefited. And it also has templates and guidelines on how to create a parental leave policy. So if you're a small practice, it's got the step-by-steps, they're ready for you to go. And then also on the same website, you've got the data and the case studies to back up your argument of why it's important to have. And then for anything else, Fair Work Ombudsman is your go-to website. That's your everything you need is there. Again, that's for templates around requests for flexibility, parental leave policies, best practice. Fair Work Ombudsman is your go-to.
Thanks, Candice. All right, with 2 minutes left, let's do a little quick round on speakers' final thoughts, starting with you, Kellie.
Yeah, I would just sort of say, when you're a parent, what you do whenever you're away from your children, you sort of measure that against the impact that you're having. So I would say, go to work because you're passionate about what you're doing, and if you don't find that passion, then maybe you're not working in the right way or working on the right things or working for the right practice. But and don't let other people's expectations of what a mother or father looks like should be to limit you. And that's something that I kind of constantly grapple with myself. Should I be at home? Should I be changing things? My youngest daughter Daisy is going to be going to kindy next year, and I'm thinking, should I change? Because it's our last year of potentially being at home, and thought about that for a while. I thought, but that's not what I want to do, and that's okay. And so you don't have to carry other people's guilt and expectations of the way how they parent or how they manage their working and family life. You have to design your own way, whatever that looks like.
Me? Sorry. Yeah. Look, I think just don't be afraid to ask for support from anywhere. I think that there's generally a recognition that being a parent, while it's a great thing to be a parent, it's an amazing experience, especially with the partner that I have. But I think it's a struggle. People get tired, and people want to try and maintain the degree of sort of enterprise and respect and meaningful work that they had before the children came along. We're not going to stop having children. We're always going to be having children because it's the way the world works.
Seán, I've had enough. Thank you. Cheers now.
Yeah, I think I'm done with after 2, but get.
Well, I think it's about asking for support from your employee, from your colleagues, from your friends, from your family, and whatever happens, you know, whether it's miscarriage, whether it's stillbirth, the various things that go on during your life as a parent, you just have to be able to ask for support, because it will be there.
All right, any parting words, Candice?
When I was thinking about what I was going to talk about today, I think what I wanted to get across is empowering people on the call as parents, empowering you to know that you can request for you have rights and entitlements as a parent. You can request flexibility. There are avenues to be supported. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn if you have any questions and would like some help. As a mum, I want to help other mums. It's sort of, that's how motherhood changes you. I really love what you guys are talking about around designing your life, you know, having meaningful work. That's all really resonating with me. But I encourage you to speak openly, encourage you always communicate, and it's just really great to see Fair Work transitioning towards being really gender neutral, encouraging dads to take leave, and making everything more flexible to help you balance that work and family. I don't like the word balance, the work and family blend. There is no balance. I just, I don't feel very balanced in my work life, personal, all of that. So it's the blend, not the balance.
Love that, actually. I'm gonna read
Right, love that. Thank you, all of you, for your generosity with your insights. I think we could talk for hours, and there are questions that we didn't get to. So please, if anyone has any more questions, feel free to email it through to the WA chapter, wa@architecture.com.au. And you know, there are a whole series of links in the chat that we'll be sending through, including a Parler article that Kellie wrote in 2017, which was a letter to her younger self titled Working Mother 1 Year On. I personally found that really helpful and still very, very relevant, even though you wrote it years ago. So if you haven't yet read that, I highly recommend you to check that out. And other than, again, thank you, speakers. Thank you, Claude, from our chapter office, working away in the background. Couldn't have done this without you. Thank you to our Gender Equity Task Force and to Imagine. And, you know, this is only one part of the discussion. There's more to come, which is why we'll hopefully have an ongoing webinar series. So watch this space. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you, Mimi. Thanks, everyone.